Hello everyone, let's get into some AZ-305 content today. Let's go and have a look at tags and let's go and have a look at policies and get straight into this content. Remember, hashtag like and subscribe, you know the usual routine, bell icon, subscribe button, and let's go and work on some Azure tags and policy systems that will help you out in passing your Azure examinations. Morning everyone, or afternoon, or evening, but you know what, just hello. Right, so we're going to get into a new series of videos, and here I want to go and discuss information that is actually valid to the AZ-305 courses, the Azure Architect courses. This information also kind of runs into AZ-104, AZ-900, and well, pretty much any Azure course. It all kind of welds together. But either way, at the moment and today, we're going to go and check out something to do with tags, and we're going to check out a little bit to do with policies. Okay? Policies. Is that how you spell policies? Hey Siri, how do you spell policies? P-O-L-I-C-I-E-S. P-O-L-I-C-I-E-S? Yeah, that works. Just like most people in IT, I can't spell for toffee, guys. Everything is an acronym. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to create some resources. We're going to create a couple of resource groups. We're going to create a resource group called Apple. Okay. And we're going to create a resource group called Pair. All right. And in these resource groups, we're going to create some things. So we're going to do most of this through PowerShell, just for funsies. And these resource groups themselves are going to create some things inside them. We're going to create some VNets. We're going to have VNet 1, VNet 2, and VNet 3 inside here. There's 2. And inside Pair, we're just going to create some disks. We're going to do disk 1, we're going to do disk 2, and we're going to do disk 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually tag these things. Now, all tags are key value pairs. That's it. They help to organize resources in Azure. So in this case, my tags are actually going to be fruit is equal to apple. Another tag called fruit is equal to, whoops, let's neaten that up a bit. Fruit is equal to pear. Okay. And these two tags we are actually going to apply to our resource group level. Now, interestingly, these tags don't flow down. So if we apply a tag to a resource group and these resource groups get tagged, those tags don't apply down here into these resources. So maybe we have another tag. In this case, we might have a tag that says projects is equal to AZ-305. Now, if we want that tag to be applied to all of our resources inside our resource groups, what we're actually going to need to do is we're going to need to apply that basically individually to each of these items as we go through. That is a bit annoying to do in the interface. So what we've got is we've got some nice PowerShell to do this with a lovely for loop inside there to go and crunch through each of these resources and actually apply those tags to there. So you're going to see the PowerShell for applying tags, and you're going to see the PowerShell for applying tags to multiple resources. What we're then actually going to do is we're actually going to create a new virtual machine resource group, and we're going to call this UK VMs or UK virtual machines. But inside here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a virtual machine that actually exists in East US in America. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to prove a couple of things here. First of all, a resource group actually has a location as well. So if this resource group is set to UK South, you will be able to see that this resource group can actually take resources that exist in other locations. But we can also create policies. So if we create up here a policy, and inside this policy, we are going to do something called allowed locations. And in this allowed locations policy, what we're going to do is we're going to restrict this to only take resources that exist in UK South. And when we apply that to this resource group, you'll see a couple of things. Number one, you'll see that this resource over here, this America resource that's living in East US, isn't compliant to a policy here, but it doesn't get destroyed. It doesn't go in and just randomly delete your stuff because you've messed up a policy. But what we will do then is we will try from the portal over here to create another virtual machine that's actually also existing in America, and we'll try and deploy this back to this resource group that has this policy applied, and you'll see that that actually gets denied. Okay, so what it means is if we apply policies that actually restrict certain things, maybe those policies are for things like tag enforcement to make sure that people have to actually deploy tags to a resource, or maybe those policies are doing, in this case, a location restriction. If we've got existing resources, we're not going to, for the most part, break things inside our environment if that stuff already exists and it's not compliant, but anything future will be prevented from performing that action by the policy itself. So let's get into it and have a look at some demos related to these tags and policies and build out this infrastructure that I'm drawing out. All right then guys, let's get straight into this. So I'm going to launch up Edge. I mean, I could launch up Chrome if I wanted to, or if I want to be very adventurous, Firefox. If I want to be really adventurous, I could launch something like Lynx browser. If you don't know what Lynx browser is, guys, go Google that thing, a text-based Linux browser. Anyway, let's go into portal.azure.com and we'll start to get into some tag creation and some resource creation, and we can see how this stuff works. So I'm just going to log in here directly into the Azure portal. That's all good. And what I'm going to do is, no, I don't want to synchronize my data. As soon as this thing pops up, we're going to fire up the Azure Cloud Shell. And in this Azure Cloud Shell, we're going to run a little bit of PowerShell. So I'm going to run this as PowerShell and we'll create some storage here. While it's doing that, I'm going to pop up here the PowerShell ISC, because what I want to show you is some PowerShell in relation to creating resources in a second. It's easier to kind of just break it down in ISC rather than in Cloud Shell. As wonderful as Cloud Shell is, it's a bit sketchy for working with large amounts of code. I mean, PowerShell ISC is fine, but you want to use VS Code today. It's just what I have installed on this lab environment. So my Cloud Shell should be up and running now, he says, authenticating to Azure. Getting through. All right, cool. So let's go and make some resource groups. So I'm going to use this one. We're going to use a resource group of Apple, and we're going to create another resource group here, and we're going to create a resource group of Pear. If you're wondering what all of this stuff is here, this kind of like big block of text appearing, this is actually PowerShell Cloud Shell going a bit mad, because Microsoft have this auto prediction system in here, and it's trying to kind of auto predict things, and it's going a bit crazy. There's no real way to turn that off either. You're just going to have to deal with it. So we've got two resource groups created. If we go into resource groups here, well, I say there's no way to turn it off. I mean, instead of using the Cloud Shell here, we could remote connect to it with our terminal. So we've got two things, Apple and Pear actually created. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set this lovely little thing up. We're going to set a verbose preference to continue. What that's going to do is for my shell, it's going to give me more output. This is actually really, really freaking useful. So instead of just seeing something like, okay, my thing is deploying, please wait, undetermined amount of time, it will actually say, please wait, deploying, and it will tell you all the individual steps of what it's actually doing to do that deployment. So what we're going to do is I'm going to paste in some code here, and this is what we're going to build. Let's make that a little bit bigger. So we're just going to build 3 virtual networks, VNet 1, VNet 2, VNet 3, and they are in a nice little for each loop over here. And you can see we're just going to use this new AZ virtual network subnet config to create address prefixes in each of these subnets. We're just going to make some resources that we can actually tag in a moment. So I'm going to grab that code here. I'm going to paste that in as plain text, and it should hopefully kick through and work. Now, there's another couple of ways you can kind of accomplish this for pasting code into the PowerShell Cloud Shell. I mean, I could create a PowerShell file and actually go and execute that as a PS1 script. That would kind of work as well. I could go and upload this to a Git repository and then download it again. There's a few different ways of accomplishing this. Either way, this is the simple way at the moment. So if I go into Apple as this resource group, inside here, I should have not one VNet, refresh, please, refresh again. There we go, 3 VNets. Rule number 1 of Azure. If at first you don't succeed, refresh, okay? So let's go and have a look at the next block of code I'm going to run down here. This is just going to create 3 disks as well. Again, I'm just creating some resources. It's buried inside the for each loop. If you want to know how to do for each loops, go watch my PowerShell videos, okay? And you know the routine, hashtag, like and subscribe and all that lovely stuff. So let's go and create some disks as well. This is actually going to create these disks inside the resource group of pair. So if I go into pair, and I click refresh here, we should see these disks starting to flow in a moment. Refresh some more. Yeah, try again in this view. It'll get there. Come on. Wakey. Okay, let's just try closing that whole thing. Let's try opening it up again. Let's try refreshing it one more time. Still no resources. Okay, let's just check they haven't gone into the wrong one. No, it's gone to Apple. And this one has gone to pair. There they are, disks 1, 2, and 3. Refresh. The portal is not real time. It's querying a backend API. Sometimes it lags a little bit. That's just normal. You find that in other cloud services as well, not just Azure. So in the portal, we're going to go and navigate to the resource groups. We're going to open up Apple and we're going to actually apply some tags to this. So you can tag individually on resources if you really want to, or you can tag, at this case, you can actually tag on whole resource groups. So here I'm just tagging the resource group level for fruit and apple. Now on here as well, just take note that if you do this tag here for fruit apple and we go back to overview and we go back to something like VNet 1, you'll notice that VNet 1 has a tag, except it doesn't. The tags don't actually inherit down here, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into pair and we're just going to tag pair as well. So let's go into the pair resource group. This is just doing a tag on the folder itself. Fruit is equal to pair, okay? And again, we'll just go and check a look at the disk 1 inside here. Let's go into pair, close that off. Go into pair, we're going to go and have a look at disk 1 and notice that we don't actually have any tags actually set on here at all. So what I want to do now is I want to actually get some more code going here in PowerShell. So what we're going to do is we're going to crunch through some resource groups. We're actually going to crunch through, in this case, these 2 resource groups, apple and pear. This is actually just specifying that this little at here is actually going to be an array. And what I'm going to do is the tags I'm going to apply are going to be this. Notice this has got curly brackets, not normal parentheticals. That's because this information inside here is a hash table, not an array. So a tag is a hash table. And then what we're going to do is we're going to crunch through each of these and we're going to apply this. So for each resource group in resource groups, process through each one of them, okay? Then what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually go and replace in here, applying the tag to resource group dot resource name and the set AZ resource with the resource group ID with the new tags. So note the comments here, get all the resources in the resource group, loop through each resource in those resource groups and apply the tag, and then merge the existing tags with the new tag and then apply those tags to the resource itself. Now let's go and see what kind of output we get for all of that. So let's take this big huge block of code here and let's just go to paste that in as plain text directly into the Cloud Shell and go and run this thing. So look what it's doing. We've got some verbose outputs as well. The verbose outputs is because we've turned on that switch earlier, that nice little variable. And you'll notice that we can actually see it's actually crunching through each of those resources. If I didn't have the verbose output on, I would just be sitting here with a blank Cloud Shell and not knowing if this thing is actually doing anything. So now if I go back and actually return to that resource group pair and which I'm already in, and select that disk 1, which I'm already in. Let's go back and refresh this. We should be able to see that our tags are actually applied. We've got project is a value of AZ-305 lab work. That's nice. Now what we can actually do is we can go and filter for these specific tags in other services. So if I go and have a look at cost management and billing over here, let's go into cost management and billing, and down here, under this, under cost management, so in here I can go and analyze my costs. I can look at my invoices, I can look at how I'm going to pay Microsoft. I can even look at fun stuff like Azure Advisor recommendations in here, and this will tell me if I'm overspending. Maybe I'm spinning up virtual machines that are way too big for me, and it's going to tell me you might want to reduce those sizes of virtual machines. That's quite cool. So what we can do here as well is inside cost management, we can go to cost analysis, and inside cost analysis we can start to filter things down. So for example, where are we going to go to? We can go and have a look at our resource groups down here. And if we go into resource groups, we can see a list of the costs related to my specific resource groups. There's quite a few on this subscription from various different lab services. But eventually, what you should be able to see is anything that's currently containing costs for our environment. Now, the problem is here, I don't actually have those costs listed yet because those networks and the resources in those resource groups are so new. But eventually what we'll end up seeing is the costing for example, the resource group of Apple and the resource group Pear. What I can also do inside here is if I click on this customize view at the top and scroll down to convert to customize view, so a couple of clicks there, we can actually go and get a little bit more granular information down here and group things slightly differently and see this information slightly differently. So we can actually say, for example, group by our resource group name down here. We can also group by cost allocation, frequencies, meters, products, all sorts of fun stuff. We can also even go and group here by tag. So if we've got, for example, multiple services and multiple things that deployed across multiple environments, or when I say environments, multiple resource groups, we can go and look, instead of the resource group level, we can go and look at the specific tag that we actually want to go and check out here. Again, my tag isn't actually being listed just yet. It's probably because it needs a little bit of time to actually appear in the system. But if I go and select another tag down here, like for example, if I go and grab something like this application tag, you'll see all of the resources that are related to this specific application tag. Okay. Now, what we can also do is we can react to these tags in different ways as well, which is quite nice. So one of the things that we could actually do with tags is maybe you're getting into this habit of saying, right, we have tags, we want to be able to filter with tags, we want to be able to open up this tag system on the Azure portal, and we want to be able to click things like Project AZ-305 lab work and see all of the things that has that tag, irrespective of which resource group they're plugged into. But we have a situation where we need to actually tag this stuff. We need to actually force people to tag, and we can do that with policies. In fact, we can do a number of things with policies down here as well. So if we go and check out policies inside Azure, we go and click on policy here, you'll see we have a whole bunch of policies available to us. So if you go into definitions for policies, and we scroll down here through definitions, you'll see there's a whole bunch of different policies created by default in Azure for us to work with. In fact, these are initiatives. There's two things, policies and initiatives. Initiatives are groups of policies, whereas policies themselves are individual little settings, shall we say. Now, some of the settings we could actually do inside this kind of environment is we could restrict things. Like, for example, if we go for tags, there is actually a policy down here that says, where are we?
A few moments later.
Okay, so here in policies, if we go and search for require a tag, you'll notice there is actually one of these things in here that says require a tag and its value on resource groups, or require a tag and its value on resources, or require a tag on resource groups. These are interesting. Enforces the existence of tags on resource groups and enforces the existence of a tag. Now what you can do within here is you can go and take one of these policies, apply it to your subscription, and it means that when somebody actually deploys a resource, they have to apply a tag to it during that deployment process, otherwise the resource won't actually deploy. But we're going to give a different example for policies. We're going to have a look at how policies can help us restrict where things can actually be deployed to. So inside here, I'm going to go and create a resource group, okay? So I'm just going to come in here into creating a resource group, and I'm going to build a resource group called UK Virtual Machines, and we're going to deploy that to UK South. So here, within this virtual machines location, or this virtual machines resource group, we're going to deploy some stuff and some things to it. So I'm going to search for virtual machines up here, and I'm going to create an Azure virtual machine. And I'm going to build this up as an America virtual machine. So I have not put any restrictions on here at all, but we're going to send this to East US, okay? We'll change that from Ubuntu, we'll just put that on Windows Server 2022 Hot Patch Edition, because we don't want any hippie open source operating systems at the moment. We want to pop these in. Let's give this some passwords. And we'll just go and review and create that. I'm just going to leave everything else as default. So let's wait for this America machine to actually deploy in our environment. It shouldn't take too long to actually build. But notice the resource group itself is set to be called UK Virtual Machines. And the resource group itself had a location of UK South. But this virtual machine here is being deployed into America. So there's no restriction on the resources in the resource group. The actual resource group itself, so if we go back over here and have a look, if we go and have a look at the resource group itself here, there we go, UK Virtual Machines. This is still location of UK South. It's just a label at this point. It's not really doing anything. To actually restrict this stuff, we need to go and create a policy. So let's go back into policies over here. Click around to get to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into definitions, and we're going to look for this definition of this policy called allowed locations. Okay, so if we go here into allowed locations, and we can do this one just called allowed locations. There's loads and loads of policies we can do, but this is just showing how one gets deployed and enforced. So notice we have lots and lots and lots of JSON here. All of these things are built off JSON. We can just go straight to assign. And in the basics tab under here, under the scope, we're just going to put this onto our UK virtual machines resource group here. We're not going to put it on the level of the subscription. We could put these policies onto subscription level or onto management group level, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to put this onto just this resource group. The policy enforcement is going to be enabled at the moment. That's fine. And in the parameters, we're going to change the allowed locations here. So let's go next across to parameters. We're going to change this to UK South. So the only resources in this resource group will be able to exist in, and the only place they can exist in is UK South. So let's review and create that. And we're going to build that up. There we go. Give that a second to do its thing. Because it's Azure, it needs a couple of minutes. This will take probably 5 to 10 minutes to actually enforce. So if we go back to our resource group from before, we can actually still see that our America virtual machine here is still existing. It's in location of East US. But if we go to policies, we should have that same UK restriction policy applied. Again, this is going to take a while to do. It's still not started in its compliance state at the moment. But as this sort of crunches through over the next 15 minutes, what we'll see is compliant and non-compliant resources. Let's just try and trigger that. So let's go and make another virtual machine down here. And let's go and create another Azure virtual machine. Let's go to that same resource group. Let's put the virtual machine name inside here. And let's go and deploy this to West US. Okay. So again, this is another American machine, but we'll deploy it to the other side of America down here. Let's drop that into Server 2022 Hot Patch Edition, and we'll give this some usernames and passwords so people can log into this. But remember, this is a resource that's existing in West US. And if we go and create this, we should see that we have validation failed. Now, having validation failed here, notice we get this big chunky error. If we go and have a look at raw error, and we scroll down a little bit, we should be able to see why this has actually had a problem. Notice it says it's got a policy effect of deny, and the policy was called allowed locations, and we can see that it's actually only allowed to this list of locations of UK South. So in summary, if I take a policy that restricts something or stops something from working, if that policy gets applied to a resource group that already has an existing resource in it, like for example, my America VM over here is not compliant, it's not actually going to automatically delete that resource, okay? It's not actually going to stop that from working initially, but what it will do is within the policy section over here, it's actually going to go and flag it inside the compliance section to tell you that it's actually not compliant when this actually completes. But pretty much immediately after I deploy that policy, if I try to deploy another resource that doesn't match those policy conditions, it's going to be blocked in the wizard from actually doing that. You get the same result there if you did that in PowerShell too. So that kind of concludes a quick look at how to do some tagging, how to tag some resource groups, how to tag some resources, and we looked at the cost management, how to go and check out those tags for filtering. We then took a quick look at policies, and we restricted a resource from being able to deploy to a resource group using policies. And we also used, for a couple of our things inside here, to go and build our resources out, our disks and our VNets that we were going to tag, and to build out the tagging system. Rather than crunching through each one individually, we could just use a little bit of PowerShell to accomplish that, to assign tags to many different things at once. It's actually quite hard to do that without PowerShell. There's a lot of clicking through the interfaces, so it's quite nice to have this sort of stuff available to you. I hope you enjoyed that module, and we'll be back next time to take a look at more stuff related to the AZ-305.
And you know the routine, hashtag like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me next time. Goodbye.